My name is Megan Phinney with Los Alamos National Lab, and I'm here to kind of basically talk about the other end of the kind of spectrum from Angelica's talk, and the unique fact that, yes, I actually like user support. I know that's not the case for a lot of people, so I'll be talking about that and how that works with doing user support with Charliecloud. So my background, whoa, that's huge photos of me. So I have an interesting background. So I started teaching all the way back when I was in middle school. So I taught dancers for 4 or 5 years. I had to scroll back through Facebook to try to find some pictures. The cutest thing is the girl in the little red dress on the bottom was the same girl on top, and that was an accident. I thought that was cute. Along with that, I also have done like K-12 STEM outreach. So I planned science activities for kids of all ages and let them plan them. Also tutored, did summer camp and everything in between. So basically I like teaching since forever. So on the other hands of things, so technically, so I actually started as a Charliecloud developer as an undergrad student back in 2020. I found the lab through Grace Hopper celebration right before the pandemic, which is what those two pictures are and why I look like I'm 12. And then once I graduated from college, which the photo over there is my graduation picture with my hot pink lava girl hair, I got converted to full staff and I got moved to a new team, which is Consult, which is the user support team. But I had a background in containers, now do user support, so obviously now do container user support. This is so blurry, but I got really into the IT crowd while working on these slides, so there's a couple IT crowd gifts. So kind of what do I do? Also, just as a side note, if anyone wants to interrupt or ask questions, please stop me. Okay. So on this side, we have user support. So I take phone calls, work the phone shift, do email tickets, do job usage, do visualization, GitLab support for our internal instances, and kind of anything else that gets thrown at me depending on what breaks or what the users need that day. And then I have, of course, my background in containers and Charliecloud. So kind of my work is right in the middle of those two. So there's kind of two main things I do with container user support. So the first one is I help users run their container workflows on different HPC systems. So kind of a common use case is a user saying, I could run this workflow at NERSC using Podman or Singularity, whatever, a different container runtime. Why can't I run it on our system? And then I spend 18 million years figuring out what the issue is, and sometimes it's literally a difference in the file system. And then from there, I'm also work with the developers by telling them kind of what the users' needs and complaints are. So for example, after this conference, I got a big old list for Rita and Angelica from different suggestions from users or different things that I heard from talks this week. Live, laugh, love tickets. Okay, so I use Lano's ticketing system, which is RT. Reed suggested showing a dummy ticket, but then I realized that's really boring, so I'm not going to do that because it's basically just the email conversation. And we're able to kind of organize them by putting in different categories, and I'm able to send reports off to different teams depending on what's broken. So if I get a report that our Lester file system is down, I get to go send the ticket over to file systems for them to debug. But what I think is interesting, so every year for my goals, I calculate how many tickets I did. And most recently in FY25, I got over 800 tickets. So I really do live, laugh, love tickets. And that's what I was doing during all the talks, was actually going through and closing about 50 tickets. So yay. I just thought that was funny. Ticket trends. So I started doing tickets back in 2022. Now it's 2026. And even in that short amount of time, I've already seen a change in ticket trends. So I'll just kind of talk about that and why I think it's interesting. So the first one, main one, probably all sick of hearing about it, kind of the shift from multi-physics simulation to AI. I think that one's pretty straightforward. And most of the other ticket trends I'll talk about, it kind of falls underneath that shift, just because the needs for AI workflows is very different than the needs for multi-physics simulation. So lots of things have changed the last year for what my focus needs to be. Oh yes, I got bored with ChatGPT, so live, laugh, love AI is, I'm pretty sure, what everyone wants me to say. Okay. So with AI, there's a lot of also a shift from CPU workflows to GPU workflows, especially with users who aren't so familiar with the GPU specifics or differences. So I spend a lot of time working with users to explain what things they need to change in their workflows to first just be able to run on the GPUs, just because there's different steps just to get it to start running. And then also suggestions to optimize their code to get the best performance, because it's very expensive to run the GPUs. So live, laugh, love GPU. Cool. There's also been this one's not as big of a shift, but they're starting to shift a lot from single container workflows to multi-container workflows. So for example, like with multi-physics simulation, the way it commonly worked is there was one container for the entire application, and a user would run that one container, and that's it. But now with AI, there is so many bits and pieces that each container needs to have its own thing. And also with NVIDIA, a lot of their container workflows utilize Docker Compose. So, and Docker Compose is a tool that lets users run containers at a different time and specify how they interact. And now Charliecloud has its own tool that Angelica will talk about later. But that's an example of something I begged Angelica to do because the user asked for it. Yeah. This was the most annoying trend. The container size increased a lot. So I think before we got into AI GPUs, the longest amount of time that it took for me to pull a container was 20 minutes. And now it can take up to over an hour to pull a container. But here's some actual specifics besides me just going based on vibes. The Docker Hub Python container is about 1 billion bytes, and then the NVIDIA provided PyTorch container is about 30 billion bytes. And NVIDIA containers just in general are ginormous, just because they add so much extra support for so much different architectures that's not needed for all the users. So a lot more thought has to go kind of the best way to store and share all these ginormous containers so users are not wasting their time having to re-pull these images every day, especially with a lot of these workflows being on the classified side. That transfer is not the most fun. Cool. Yes, and with AI, there was a couple talks on this already this week, but there is now a much larger need for data management, because AI workflows has lots and lots and lots and lots of data for training and other things as well. And now we all, or at least in the support side, really have to think, okay, where should users be storing their data? Do we need to update our file system policies? So it's a lot of going back and forth between the users and the admins to find the best solution that works for everyone. So lots of little tweaks needed to make sure the users are able to store all of their data while also not clobbering down the system for everyone else. And that's a really fun balance. Definitely don't do correctly. Okay, so the next couple of slides, I'll go into some common ticket types with containers. So the first kind of most common one and most fun one is when users have build issues. So usually I have a user who emails me and they're always like, why can't I build? And it's always some super complex container build that takes like 18 million hours to build with millions of dependencies. They always wonder, why can I build it on this cluster and not this other cluster? And that's my dog. And those clusters, so always the clusters have two different environments and different software environments, and sometimes even different architectures, which is really fun to explain to not super savvy users. So usually the solution is to either rebuild from scratch, get all their dependencies, which is not a super fun time, or usually you can find a pre-built container somewhere on Docker Hub, because usually it tends to be like open source code. And as we all know, scientists do not like change. So I usually get pushed back every time I suggest this. Usually I'm able to convince them by showing them that I'm able to get this software solution running within a couple of minutes with just some Charliecloud commands. And then that tricks them into starting to use containers. But I will say, most of the time, a couple weeks later, they email me back and saying, oh, I guess containers are easier. I've not yet have someone come back and tell me containers are stupid. So I think the message of this ticket is I'm always right and users should listen to me. At least they should when I suggest containers. Okay, so ticket type number 2 is replicating Docker behavior. So user contacts and is like, why does this workflow run with Docker and not Charliecloud? And from there, there's kind of 2 different paths that ticket can go. So the first one is that the workflow includes functionality that Charliecloud doesn't support, and usually I provide a suggestion for things you have to modify to get it to work. A lot of time it is something that you don't really need, so a pretty common one to fall in this category is networking. Charliecloud doesn't do networking the way Docker does, and it's not really needed. So we just have to simplify the workflow. Then users are happy. On the other side of things, this is a better response than to a user, is that Charliecloud is currently working on implementing that missing functionality, and then I give them a workaround in the meantime. So when Angelica talked about entry points in the command Docker instruction and chcompose, those are the most common, those are the top 2 requests from users. So I have many tickets that follow kind of this path with Docker compose. NVIDIA workflows, very popular in the last year. So it's always a user asking why can't I run this NVIDIA provided workflow. What's interesting is that this user is all over the place. So I'm getting a lot of users who are not used to an HPC environment. They're scientists that were told, go do AI, and they're trying to learn it from scratch. Or they're users that are super smart scientists that are trying to do new and cool AI things. So they break the system with all their cool, scary, big AI workflows. So luckily I can recognize some users so I know which path we have to go down. But it's usually the same. I spend usually weeks, if not more, debugging. The common kind of issues like the workflow uses Docker Compose. And then I say, we're getting there, I promise. So also, let's see, another common one is there's an issue with our file system, but this one requires the most in-depth debugging on my end, and usually sometimes require getting more people involved, because I'm an expert in containers, but I usually have to go get some AI GPU experts to help really get into the weeds there. Okay, this is the final ticket type. This one's for CVM. So this one is the Charliecloud module is broken. I always get this from our savvy users because they are always the first one to contact me whenever anything is not working as they want it to. But I've been working with the Charliecloud software enough that I can recognize the error message and usually tell what needs to be fixed. So if there's a Python error, so it's a SPAC issue with the build. If there's an issue running squash containers, the lib squash views didn't get linked right. Now there's more tests involved, so it's not so much back and forth and yelling, because this is what it feels like. Or really anytime I get a ticket saying something's broken, this is how I feel in my soul. So what do I do when it's broken? I get to summon pre-team. So that's CVM who does it right there. And pre-team is program runtime environments, and they do the modules in all of our systems. And that is so scary and intricate, and I don't want to touch it. So thanks, CVM. I will say tomorrow I'm giving a talk on Charliecloud modules, but that's for our testbed system. Very different. I do the testbed modules, not the production ones, because that is less scary. So what do? I spend a lot of time annoying Reed for various things, but a lot of time I have to pass tickets that I get off to Reed for users that either want a super technical response in an area of the code that I'm not as familiar with, or users that really want to get into the weeds and understand why Charliecloud works this way. I also annoy Angelica a lot, who's very patient with me, to finish new features that users keep asking me about. Also annoy Scott Halverson, which is our NVIDIA rep, who is awesome. When users are stuck on NVIDIA provided containers, he's pretty great. I've worked with him a lot to figure out what is going on with NVIDIA containers and to figure out if it's an issue on Charliecloud side, is it an issue on NVIDIA's side, or is it an issue on the LANL system side? So that's always really fun. Yay, IT crowd. Okay. So here's just kind of some things I've learned from chatting with users. So this is what is true as of today, March of 2026. I'm sure this will change, but currently most users I've chatted to are wanting to replicate pre-existing container workflows versus creating their own from scratch. I could see that maybe changing depending on where kind of the AI workflow goes from here, but that's the current use case I'm seeing. So a lot of work I do is kind of like translating Docker Singularity and Podman commands into Charliecloud, because LANL systems, the only container runtime is Charliecloud. So gotten pretty good at that. And if there's something that feature that's missing, I annoy Angelica. So do I like user support? Short answer, I don't know. I was thinking about this a lot. I think I like the human aspect of computing. So I think it's more meaningful when you get to know the users and not just see their job running through. You're actually able to work with the user, understand what they're working on, and it's much more fun to get emotionally invested when you're able to work with the user and be able to celebrate when they get things working and lose your minds together when things break. So I don't know, I just always liked it. I like chatting with users, except the mean ones. Okay, the end. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Wait, let me get some time. Oh, sweet. Yes.
I'm a container noob. I'm a Charliecloud noob. And so you had a slide about the NVIDIA CDI, how that's challenging, and how there's a lot of things, and I mean, we talk about this all the time, so I just give context for everyone else in the room. But like, is there a way that Charliecloud itself can maybe pick out and select, you know, if you're given an NVIDIA image, you don't need everything that NVIDIA's trying to offer you, you know, in the image, like, is there a way to pick and select, maybe?
Yeah. So Silba was asking if there was a way to pull down a really large NVIDIA container with only pulling down the things you need. So currently, no. But Reed, you said you talked to someone who has something in progress.
There may be ways to shrink them after pulling.
Okay. So no, but we've talked to NVIDIA about the annoyance of this. So, well, there's not a solution. We're complaining loud to hopefully get. No. Yeah, you just have to wait for your super large containers to pull.
Yeah, with a better registry, we can do it.
Okay.
Yeah, so registry
Yes.
doesn't like to depend on the tars and do stuff at that level.
Yeah.
We could do it. We could pull the containers and like slice them up and put them back on our systems.
So maybe. We'll figure it out later. Yeah, Rusty.
Are like the AI users on average nicer or meaner than the old monsters?
Ooh, Rusty asked if the AI users are nicer or meaner than the current users. Most of the time, the AI users are nicer, but they're usually more beginner. So it's a lot of getting very simple. The main kind of, I get some very passionate AI users who think that they need to have more resources than they currently have, and that's not something I deal with, so I get to punt them off to other people. Yeah, certain. Yeah.
I know that we have like some AI bots to answer some of the HPC users' questions, and we try to integrate with that. And what's your experience that you save time by when users first go through like some filter, they get a hate versus like the bots instead of the
Yeah. So the
Any comments on that?
Yeah, so the question was, have we used an AI bot with users? So, Silva, you might have to correct me, but yes, we have. I believe, is it just a prototype, or was that in production? Our HBC help bot. Do you know? Oh, yeah.
I mean, my people hated it, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we have it. I think we definitely have a prototype that worked, but it was kind of, when we think about an AI chat box, at least at Lanel, kind of the goal was just to have a way for beginner users to get help with their kind of easier questions, so we have more time to work on the very beefy in-depth questions. I think the current issues we were having with the model was there's so much data that they can pull from. So I know it was an issue being like, okay, we pulled all of this ticket data from the past 20 years, but now we have a new system and now we have tickets and new information. How do we then update it? So nothing's in production yet, but there's been like 18 million prototypes. So who knows what's going to happen or if any user is going to use it. But in theory, it will make it easier, even though the beginner user tickets are usually my favorite.
I'm always worried about what I'm say. The first solution is clean up your home directory, minus I have store.
Oh my god, yeah.
Careful with what you
Oh my gosh. We had an issue where our user accidentally did that 2 years ago, so I had a little mini heart attack there when you said that. Yeah, don't want users to break things. Sweet. Any other questions? Yeah.
People could install a container in their own home directories. Is that something that's disallowed by policy or anything? Or?
Yes. Wait.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Charliecloud's the only module, so yeah.
What does happen to Excel? From what I heard.
I have no idea.
They have to use the Type 3 modem, but they can install it.
Okay, and I have to enter.
Yeah.
Cool. So yes. Anything else? Oh, psych, it's time, right? It's time for a break. We'll be back afterwards. I'll be doing like a GPU container demo, and hopefully it goes really smoothly with the VPN connection. Bye.